imagine we get these 20 somethings before they have children and they start to get empowered when it comes to money. And they recognize that money and having a money mastery or understanding money as a skill set is not a nice to do, but it's a must do. If we could get them there, what will happen when they start having children of their own? That's how you make transcendent change.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Hello, welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore cool ways to achieve those two goals. And guess who's with us today? You're going to love Ed Vargo. He is the co-founder and CEO of Burning River Advisory Group and Enlighten Her, a community focused on financial mentorship for women. With over 20 years in financial services, Ed helps women to navigate long-term financial planning for all life stages, including retirement, college, and transitions related to divorce or death. His dedication is personal, inspired by his mother's financial struggles after his parents' divorce. Ed is committed to empowering women to confidently manage their finances and avoid similar hardships. He is a member of the Financial Planning Association and the Society of Financial Service Professionals. He's married with 5 daughters, so he better know how to help women, ages 18 to 24, whom he has raised to be financially empowered young women. Cool. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks for having me.
No sons, huh?
No sons. No, I tried 5 times. Didn't happen.
I actually, some friends of my parents had 5 girls and then they had a boy and they were like, thank goodness we can finally stop having children.
Yeah, I can't say we were really trying for a boy, believe it or not. At the third one, we thought we might take a pause or stop. And I was fine with the 3 daughters at that point. And of course, as fate would have it, we had 2 more. So it's been a blessing for sure. They're wonderful.
That's awesome. So tell us about before you started this business. Were you working for someone else or have you always had more of an entrepreneurial bent?
No, I'd worked at a bank for a few years out of college, did a complete 180. I worked at a semi-private golf club and was kind of going to be trying to be a, club pro and get into the business. I was really big into golf at that point, was on the track. I was certainly not good enough to play in any real meaningful way, but to be a club pro and run a country club, I was on that track, did that for a couple of years. And then this is in 2000, I made the switch. I said, my first daughter was born in 99. And it's like, I really probably got to get into something real, use my degree. And it was right around the .com, well, it was at the .com boom at the time, then bust. And I got really intrigued in the world of personal finance and the investment world. And that's how I flipped into this career, the career that I'm in today.
Cool. So that's exciting. But do you ever wish you were golfing?
No, I'm a don't look back kind of guy. As soon as I closed the chapter on that book, it was full steam ahead into whatever I was into next.
Excellent. So how did you go from, working for someone else, a steady paycheck, knowing where your next meal is coming from, to, especially with a young child, to just saying, all right, this is it. I'm going to start working for myself. I mean, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of planning and foresight. Or did you just say like, all right, let's do it? What was your method?
Well, that was almost 25 years ago. So I have to go back a little bit. It certainly wasn't a haphazard decision. And when I thinking back to that time, I had a pretty good sense that I wanted to work in the world of personal finance. And I had a real good sense that I didn't want to do it in the traditional stockbroker way, didn't want to be in the insurance world. I really wanted to be that comprehensive financial planner, somebody who is tasked with providing holistic advice across the entire spectrum of a client's life. So it's very relationship oriented. And then the question was, well, how do you go about doing that? What's the proper way to enter into that field? You could just, well, at that time, and I think that's still true today, you have to associate or affiliate with another company. So what's called a broker dealer in our industry. I couldn't just hang up my own shingle. So I had to affiliate with the company. And as a part of that, it wasn't true like 100% on your own because you did have to have this affiliation, but you had to eat what you kill. It was very difficult, starting out in 2000. If you remember what happened in 2000, the market went straight down starting in April. And basically I started officially in September. And for the next 2.5 years, the market was down. So not the best time to be entering into a profession like that. But I had a real good sense that I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the profession I wanted to be in. I'd been out there in the workforce enough to get a feel for, what this next phase of my life, at least I thought what it would be, what it should be. And it's just turned out I haven't looked back since then. It's been a wonderful transition, a lot of ups and downs along the way, but nearly 25 years later, we're here with Burning River Advisory Group as my primary company. And then our sister company, Enlighten Her, we're just getting that one off the ground.
Congratulations. That's fun. Why Burning River?
The name?
Yeah.
Well, it has sort of an inauspicious name given the fact that Cleveland, I'm from Cleveland, and there's this association with this burning river. And so Clevelanders know it and they don't think about it as a negative thing per se. I know nationally it's kind of butt of jokes, this or that, oh, the river caught fire. But it happened over 50 years ago. And I was looking to tie something that the local community would can coalesce around because we didn't have a niche at that point. We weren't focused on working with women at that point. So I wanted something to harken back to the city. The acronym was very appealing. BRAG is the acronym, Burning River Advisory Group. And the only hesitation I had was, of course, Burning River didn't have the most positive connotation. And so in our marketing and the way we spun this, and I truly believe this, I didn't want our past to define our future. And if you come to Cleveland today, all of that stuff is way behind us. I mean, it's still, again, it's pervasive in the national media to a certain extent, but it's not a reflection of where the country, where the city's at today. And it certainly wasn't a reflection of where Burning River was and us getting out there and getting started. So the name stuck, and we've held on to it ever since. So it's a
Great.
term of endearment for us, this Burning River. We don't look at it with a shameful eye.
That's good. So what's a mistake that you think that people make, or women, let's say women specifically make when they're planning for their retirement or when they're thinking about their finances?
I think there's a couple mistakes that come to mind for women in particular, but I think it might be true for more broadly than that. I don't think people get started early enough. Now, that's not newsflash. That's not eye-opening
Yeah.
information, right? Everybody says, "Oh, I should have started sooner." But that's the things. Like everybody says that I should have started sooner, but nobody starts sooner, or very few people start sooner. And it's worse for women because women don't engage with money nearly as readily as men do. Women have a sort of an anti-bias toward money, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We could talk for a long time about why that is. Men tend to raise their hand about money. They're much more comfortable naturally with the idea of dealing with money and investments in particular. And so for women, there is a tendency, for men and women, there is a tendency to start later than is ideal, but it's even worse for women. And then women have a greater uphill battle when it comes to building wealth because of if they want to raise a family. Most of the burden of raising children or having children, of course, falls disproportionately on women. So more often than not, if someone's going to stay home, even if it's for a short while to raise the children, it's typically the mother. It's not the father in most cases. And if you have a couple of kids, two, three kids, you do that two or three times, and you're out of the workforce for any appreciable amount of time. Well, that's time that you could be spent developing your skill set, your competency, your experience, and you typically get paid according to your skill set, your competency, and your skill set. And so, by no one's fault, it's just the nature of nature, I guess. Women can tend to lag economically because of that challenge. So, if you start later and you're out of the workforce more frequently because you're raising families or taking care of elderly parents, all those small steps, well, they're not really small when you stack them on top of each other.
Yeah, that's true. It does add up. That's the compounding interest, the magic of compound or the miracle. What did Warren Buffett call it? The magic of compounding interest.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But how about there's also I know it's a question for women and I think maybe for parents, but I think especially for women that shouldn't I be saving for college? Shouldn't I be, taking care of my kids, making sure that they're going to be okay and my own retirement can come last? What do you think of that philosophy?
Well, I mean, I'd say yes and no. I mean, if you had to make a choice between one over the other, the one thing about retirement is there are no student loans for retirement. So there are a lot of ways to fund college if you're short. There aren't many ways to fund retirement if you're short. And so the trick is how do you do both? How do
Yeah.
you do both in some meaningful way? And what tends to happen is people get a bit overwhelmed, or they just put it off because they feel like I can't save anything. And I'm not saying that's not true. It's certainly not true in some cases. I know there's plenty of cases where people can save more, but for whatever reason, they choose not to. And there are plenty of cases where financially it's just not possible. And if it's just not possible, it's just not possible. But if you're in a situation where you can do something, something is better than nothing, especially if you start when you're young. Like my kids are between the ages now of 19 and 25. 25, 26. Changes quickly on you. And obviously I'm a financial advisor, so I've been doing this a long time. I know the benefit of all these things, and they've had the good fortune of having me as their father in that regard. And so we've started to get them saving in an early stage, in an early age.
Yeah.
And when we run their numbers, even if it's 25 bucks a month, 25 bucks a month, $300 a year, that's not much money, right? But if you started that at age 16 in a Roth IRA, if you're fortunate enough to do something like that, you had earned income, doesn't really matter. If you started investing that money somewhere, $300 a year, at age 16, you have a significant amount of money by the time you get to retirement. That $25 a month, which sounds insignificant, is more than significant if you give yourself all those years of compounding. You have that miracle of compound interest. I think Albert Einstein said that the most
Oh, is Albert
powerful,
Einstein? Oops.
yeah, well, I'm sure Warren Buffett talks about it plenty as well. But the quote that I'm thinking of anyway is that Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. And I actually use that. I remember having this conversation with my daughter, Madison, at 16, and I walked her through a site, a compound interest calculator. And I asked her that question. I said, "Hey, Maddie, you know what Albert Einstein said was the most powerful force in the universe?" And she probably said gravity. I said, "No, it's compound interest." And then I said, "Let me show you why." And then I just walked her through a very simple example that showed her if you put $25 a month into an account today, earning the standard stock market interest rate over time, or its average rate of return over time, here's where you would be after 50 years, because she was 16, right? So 66 in retirement, here's how much money you have. And we went through a couple of examples. And I remember at one point, and I knew I was like reeling her in. She's like, "Why doesn't everybody do this?" What a great comment, right? 16 years old, doesn't know anything about anything when it comes to that. And her comment was, "Why doesn't everybody do this?" And so if you can get to people when they're younger, that's our mission of Enlighten Her to a very large degree, is to try to get to young women early, maybe right out of college, getting their first real job if they don't
Yeah.
go to college, and get them started doing the right things right away, because those smart decisions, those little decisions, that law of accumulation, right? Those small decisions stacked on top of each other over long periods of time become significant, meaningful things if you start them early enough and if you let them run for long enough.
That was going to be my next question. And you kind of answered it, but let's go into more detail. Like, how do you introduce the idea of money and the subject, right? The mystique or whatever. How do you introduce that to children, and when, how old can they kind of be? I mean, obviously you can't go into too much, it could be a class, I suppose, but just in general, because I think parents sort of struggle with that. Well, should I just make them pay for something, or should I give them an allowance, or what? But that doesn't even really, I mean, I had an allowance, but I still was like 50 before I figured out about the stock market. So how can you do that to set kids up to be successful financially?
Yeah, there are a number of ways, and certainly I think you want to just start low, have your bar low. You don't think about investing or stock market, that kind of stuff. That's a much more complex subject. But the first thing I would do is I would normalize talking about money in a sort of in a neutral way, emotionally neutral or positive. Because a lot of times, if you talk about money in a negative way, "Oh, we're broke all the time. We don't have money for this. We can't do that." And money becomes a very negative thing in someone's life, and it can create a response in that person. I grew up in an environment at home where my dad always talked bad about people who had money.
Yeah,
We never had any money. He was bad with money, and that was just his thing. He was bad with money. And
yeah,
so his way of coping with that was to talk bad about other people who had money.
right.
Those people were the bad people, right? Because
That's
they had
right.
money, all they cared about was money. And that was his way of dealing with his own inadequacy around money. So I think we want to talk about money, but talk about money in a positive way. You don't have to make stuff up, but talk to your spouse, your partner in front of your kids about money. Let them ask questions if they have them, because they do have a lot of questions. I think parents would be surprised at how much kids, especially teens, think about money and have questions around money.
Mm,
And if you don't normalize the conversation around money, it's not had.
yeah.
And so they don't learn anything. But once, and then the other way to do this, and this is a little trick, is if there's a message you want to get across to one of your children, they got to be a little older for this, I think, but is you can sort of deliver a message talking about a subject to each other with when they're in earshot, when they're in earshot. So they're in
Yeah.
the room on the other side of the room, you know they're listening to you, and then you have a conversation about money. So you're not lecturing them about money, you're not teaching them a lesson. There's no pushback, there's no conflict. It's just them eavesdropping on your conversation, but you know this. And so what you end up doing is you're starting to instill positive values or instill values around money or just concepts around money, simple concepts, whatever those happen to be. It could be if you're trying to get them prepared for college and you know you need to have a conversation with them that they're going to have to pay for some of their college, that this isn't going to be a free lunch on their parents. That can be a difficult conversation for your kids to hear, especially if they grew up around a bunch of people who have had college paid for them. And so you start to just have the conversation with the two parents, and just talking about, say, yeah, I might say something like, yeah, Maddie, yeah, when Maddie gets to college, she's going to have to take out some loans, and then we're going to do what we can. And I'm talking to my wife about this, and Maddie
Yeah.
hears this. Now, she could pipe in and ask or say something at that point in time, but chances are she won't.
Mhm.
And then it's just a little trial balloon. It's a little deposit of information that she can ruminate on, and then we can come back to later. Just an example, but I think we want to talk about money in a positive way, and not be afraid to have those conversations. The other thing is kids need to have their own money. They cannot learn about money if they don't have access to their own money. And so I never had an allowance. We never paid our kids an allowance, and there's nothing wrong with paying an allowance. I think that's very important because they do have money. What we did is we said, you have chores for the household that everybody does because you're a part of this house and everybody pitches in for the household. But I would hire my kids to do some things that were just for me. I'd say, well, why don't you go clean out my car? Why don't you wash my car? Instead of taking it down the street, I'll pay you, $20, you wash the car. Now they have their own money. So they got money from work. It wasn't just given to them. They got money for work. And it's very important that they associate you get paid to do work. That's how you get money, by going to work for it. And then what we wouldn't do is we wouldn't pay for sort of superfluous things that were, I think we're, this is a subjective thing, but let's just say they wanted another pair of tennis shoes. We just got them shoes for school, or they have perfectly fine tennis shoes. I'd be like, that's fine. You have your own money, go use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but think about that, right? Because if those shoes cost $60 and you have, $75, do you want to blow all $60, almost all of your money in a pair of shoes that you don't need? You already have nice shoes. And you have a conversation around that. You don't decide for them. You just
Right.
say, look, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if that were me, I'd want to hold on to my cash because there might be a concert I want to go to with my friends 2 weeks from now, but I've got this extra pair of shoes that I can't wear or that I don't need. That's going to prevent me from going to this concert. So, and then you just step back and let them decide, but they need to have their own money.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So what was the inspiration for Invest Her?
Enlighten her.
Oh, sorry, Enlighten Her. Oh my gosh.
Enlighten her. It's okay. It's all right. I know it's new. Enlighten her. Well, the genesis behind that was there's like two moments. As a wealth manager running Burning River, me and another advisor, she and I have been working together for a long time. We might be able to work with 200 to 220 households approximately. So the two advisors, a full staff, maybe we can work with a couple hundred households. And that's because the nature of that work is very labor intensive. It's very personalized, a huge time commitment. And I took a step back and I'm thinking about this and I'm like, we have all this knowledge, all this experience, and yet we could only share it with a couple hundred households. And it seemed to me like that was kind of sad. It's kind of a travesty that that's all we could do if we did it in the same way. And so then it spawned this idea of Enlighten Her. It's like, well, what if we did something bigger? What would that look like? And I looked at my girls and I'm like, they're benefiting from having a financial advisor as a father, right? And that's such a leg up on other peer group. I looked at
Yeah.
what their peers were talking about. They have cousins that are about their same age, and my kids deal with money and think about money differently than their cousins and differently than their peer group. It's not because we have more money or anything like that. That really wasn't the reason. It's to just fundamentally think about money differently.
Yeah.
And the biggest difference is that they have me, who can help them make, formulate these thoughts. And we weren't sitting in classrooms and doing, chalk talks on the whiteboard about here's how you deal with money. It's what I said earlier. We modeled money, we talked about it. But then thinking about Enlighten Her was like, well, that's the group. If we really want to make change, particularly with women, we got to get this new generation. If we can get the younger folks before they have kids, imagine we get these 20 somethings before they have children and they start to get empowered when it comes to money. And they recognize that money and having a money mastery or understanding money as a skill set is not a nice to do, but it's a must do. If we could get them there, what will happen when they start having children of their own? That's how you make transcendent change. The problem is that we were thinking like, how are we going to reach a 20 something to talk about money and, pay us to do, even if it's a small price point, right? How are we going to reach them? And I wasn't sure if we could. I'm still not sure if we can. But we know moms care about their kids. And you talk to a lot of moms and say they have regret. I mean, we all have regret, but like when it comes to money, it's, oh, I wish I would have known this earlier. I wish I would have started sooner. It's like, well, you may not be able to do that for yourself, but you can for your daughters and for your sons. And that's where Enlighten Her came about. So a long way of answering your question, but that's how we landed on Enlighten Her. And that's where our focus is. It really is on helping either women starting out or starting over. Starting over would be a woman who's coming out of divorce and maybe lost her spouse through death. She's a widow and she's starting over, but she's at a very different place than someone who's just starting out. And we're just kind of starting out ourselves at Enlighten Her. So, we're just building our material now and putting it out into the world.
Now, how will you know that that was successful? How do you know, how will you know that that venture was, what are your goals for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a matter of if you're talking actual metrics as a business owner, I think I would look at like our email list would be an important number, like how many people subscribe to our newsletter, get on our email list. That would give us indication that it's an objective measurement. If that number is growing and growing regularly, if we can track engagement on social media, of course, I think we're going to have a sales component to it. We do have a divorce navigator program that's already out. Um, so we'll track sales. We're probably going to do some sort of digital course, online course for this starting out, starting over. That's really what I hope and expect to be our flagship program. And we do financial coaching as well on that side. So we have multiple ways to reach folks and to take all this knowledge that we have, again, as a credentialed financial advisor with many, many years of experience. We're not, people like me are working in our businesses, our existing wealth management businesses. We're not going out typically and starting up a side business that makes no money, right? Takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's got to be a real true passion project. And so there's not many of those out there.
Yeah.
And we've gone through a lot trying to get this thing off the ground. There's days I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm committed to the space and for at least a while. And if it proves to not be successful, then it'll prove not to be successful. But I want to make sure we do it the right way. And like I said, we've got these things out there now where we got the digital course for the divorce course. We're probably going to work. We have the financial coaching, our new landing page, and all that stuff is coming out shortly. We're doing some workshops, and most of the stuff that we offer is for free. We're trying to help. There is an advocacy element, a large advocacy element to what we're doing. So it doesn't have to make a bunch of money. For me, consider this successful. I mean, if we could at the very least break even, pay our people, pay them well, take care of them, the world at large, I think that might be enough.
Nice. That's beautiful, beautiful mission. So Ed, what kinds of things would you like people to know who are maybe in that transitional phase? So they're they thought that they were all set. They had their spouse, they were in a relationship, and they felt like they knew what their future was going to look like. And then all of a sudden something shifted and they realized that they don't have the money they thought they were going to have. They don't have the future they thought they were going to have. And they're just feeling very unempowered.
Yeah, so a lot of those cases, the problem is people really didn't know where they stood prior to that event happening. That's mostly what happens. It's like, okay, you have this event, say a divorce, and usually divorce doesn't happen suddenly. Sometimes it does. But women tend to, I think the statistics, and I won't misquote a statistic, but women initiate divorce much more frequently than men do. Sometimes divorce is thrust upon a woman out of the blue, but it tends to be the other way around. And my point to sharing that is that you know it's coming. And so if you know divorce is coming, or if you suspect it is, you highly suspect that it is, you really should dig into all your numbers and know exactly what you have. And I find time after time after time, people don't know this. They don't do that work. Quite frankly, it's not that complicated to gather up all your financial information, put it in a concise format, and look at it. And I know people don't like to do that. So there's a big like mental barrier. But from a practical, like, how hard is this? It's not that hard. It's just a lot of people do have a lot of emotional hangups. They may feel like they're giving up on their marriage if they go down that path. There's all kinds of emotional elements that get in the way. If you could do that prior to these things, now you don't know when your spouse is going to pass away, right? So that can be a sudden event. So that means get on it now. Figure this stuff out now. If your husband handles it, then have some conversations with them. Say, hey, I would like to know, let's meet once a week. That maybe that's too much. Maybe it's once a month. And let me see everything that we have. Let's just go through it. Walk me through what we have if he's in charge. That's going to do two things. One is it's going to be able to obviously instill some dialogue between the two of you, and it's going to help you see what's there, but it's also going to help you evaluate, does he know what he's doing? I mean, this happens all the time. Like the guy raises his hand, and and when it comes to money, men are overconfident when it comes to money. Women are more risk averse. This is what the data shows, and this is what
Yeah.
people do. So the woman's less willing to raise her hand, and the guy's eager to raise his hand, irrespective of capability. So just by just this is what I believe. And then the guy handles it, but maybe he's not doing a good job. Maybe he's not doing, maybe he's doing a good job thinking that they're both on the same page what they want out of life, but they're not. So there's all kinds of ways for this thing to go wrong. So you start having some dialogue, then at least both of you are part of the conversation. You can both get on board and say, yeah, here's what I think our money should go toward. This is what's important to me. He has a voice, she has a voice. On the other hand, you sit down with your spouse and you say to him, show me what we have, and he can't do it, or it's all over the place. Okay, now you have a different type of issue on hand. And now you need to figure that one out. Like, okay, if you're not doing this the right way, or if you're not clear on all of this stuff, we need some help. Either you need to get clear, or we need to get clear together, or we need to get some help to help us get clear. But you don't want to be blindsided. Something happens to him. You think everything's fine, and then you literally inherit this mess.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. And that is sometimes it's a very taboo topic, especially as you say, I'm handling this, I'm the man of the family, I'm going to take care of the money, blah, blah, whatever. And it can be an unpleasant surprise for women when their husband suddenly passed away and you're like, what the heck is going on in here?
Yeah, and sometimes it happens the opposite way. Things are much better than you thought. I've had plenty of cases where the woman's resentful, the husband passes away, and she's like, we have all this money. He's been telling me no for decades because we don't have any money. And maybe his
His own
emotional
insecurity or,
right.
yeah,
And he's like,
yeah,
oh, we might need this for long-term care. We might need this for this or that. And so he's overly conservative. And she's like, we could have lived more of our life. We could have enjoyed life together
yeah,
more so if we were able to spend some dollars, go on vacation every now and again, get the upgraded kitchen instead of dying with all this money that I can't share with you now.
yeah,
So it creates a resentment after the fact. A lot
yeah.
of this stuff can be resolved if you just had some conversations around it, but women have to step up. And I don't mean to say that in a judgmental way at all. I think that there's a lot of headwinds why women don't step up and manage money or deal with their money directly. We can have a long, long conversation about why that is, but the bottom line is women really, I firmly believe this, and we believe this at Enlighten Her and certainly Burning River, that dealing with your money, women dealing with their money and getting control of their money and understanding of it is not a nice to do. It's a must do. We really feel that it's a survival skill. I 100% believe that it's the most important personal resource for you to manage. Personal resource, right? It's certainly not more important than your relationships and your spirituality and your health. It's up there though. It's in the top 5 of most important things in your life. It doesn't mean the pursuit of money is, although that the pursuit of money is not necessarily a bad thing, but understanding how to use money and how to use money in a way that helps you accomplish the important things in your life. That's that values aligned spending, the values alignment between your money and the work that you do for that money, along with the most important things in your life. And what we find in most cases is that people are out of alignment. They say, education for my kids is really important to me, and yet they're not saving anything toward college, but they have a brand new car in the driveway. Now, that's not for me to decide. I don't care what kind of car they drive. I don't care if our clients, taking a big step back, I don't care if they provide for their kids' education. That's not for me to care about. But if
Right.
you tell me you really care about your kids' education, and then you decide to get a brand new lease every 3 years and never put anything toward college, then do you really value education? That's a question to ask yourself. I mean, are you really taking your money and putting it in alignment with the things that you value most? Or maybe you should just step back and say, you know what, really what's more important for me right now is that I enjoy my life. And we're working really hard for my money. I need this, this car for me is a need. It's not it's a must. It's a need. It's not a want. And my kid's education is going to have to take a back seat to that. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Now you're being honest with yourself and reflective of the true reality. And now then there's none of this cognitive dissonance. There's no emotional turmoil going on.
Yeah. And it's true when you if you sit down into your budget and you say X, Y, Z, even like a silly thing like travel is important to me, and then you look and you say, oh my gosh, I spend more money in coffee than I do on travel. Hold on a minute. Is that really where I want my money to go?
Right. Yeah. And so the important thing is getting clear on what your values are, not what you think they are, but what they really truly are. And the way I think about it, and I'm not the first to say this, but if you show me somebody's calendar and their checkbook, I can tell you what they value, because where you spend your time and where you spend your money, that to me tells me what you value. You can say whatever you want to say. I have plenty of people in my life, in my family and otherwise, who say they value these different things, and yet they consistently do something different from that. So to me, I don't believe them when they say that they value those things, because they're not putting their money literally where their mouth is. Your
Yeah.
time and your money, where you spend that dictates what's truly valuable to you. Now you might be misaligned. That's the thing. If you find out and you take a step back, inspect your behaviors and what you're doing, and you may realize that you're out of alignment, but you've got to take that step back. You have to look at it and say that these are truly my values, if these stated values are truly my values, then my dollars and my time should be lining up behind them.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
that's an opinion, but I think there's a lot of validity to it.
absolutely. And even like say people say, oh, I really value my family, but then they're working till 10 o'clock at night. And you're like, all right, well, do you really think that you're doing this for your family, or is it actually more important to you to have this particular position or this prestige at work or whatever you do? It can sometimes be like, I'm going to answer this question the way I think I should answer it, as opposed to the way I actually feel, right?
Right, and that's very true. People oftentimes will do that. They'll answer the question the way they think they should answer it versus what they truly feel, what they truly value.
Yeah.
Because when you answer it the other way, based upon what you truly value, what really is meaningful to you, it may not look good when put up in the light of day. Nobody says, I'm materialistic. Nobody says that, right? Have you ever heard somebody that said, "Yep, that's me. I'm
That's me.
materialistic. I like nice
I
cars, big
love money. I
houses."
want a new car every week. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
nobody says that, but materialistic people, right? And nobody thinks of themselves as materialistic.
Right.
I don't care if somebody's materialistic or not. Again, for me, I'm libertarian in most of this stuff. I'm like, you do you, I'll do me. However, if we're gonna sit down and you're being honest with yourself, or if you hire me to help you with your money, I can point out where, well, here's what you're saying and here's what you're doing, and there's a misalignment there. You just have to come to grips with that misalignment. You don't need to tell me a little story or tell yourself a story to make it okay. Because when you own it, good, bad, and different, right? When you own it, you can actually move forward. You're not living in denial. You could test out, is that okay? Does that work for you? So then with my father, he always lived in denial. He always lived in denial. He never looked at himself and said, I'm the culprit here. I'm the one constant in all these bad financial decisions. It's not everybody else, it's not all the rich people who are just focused on money. He was just bad with money. But he never shined that light upon himself, never said, I should be doing things differently. I can be doing things differently. So he never grew. And so his problems followed with him wherever he went as it pertained to money. And
Yeah.
we see this time and time again in the money world. Like people have the same problems with money three pay raises later,
Yes.
right? So they go from making 50,000 to making 80,000, which is significantly more money, and they have the same problem making 60% more money than they did before, but they have the same financial problems. So was it really the amount of money that was the problem, or was it the way that they were spending or using that money? And
Yeah.
if you can't look at yourself and say, yes, this is the issue, you just never fix it. And so you just carry your problems with you on and on. And that's why people making, $200,000, you find them in not rich communities or high lifestyle communities are saying that they can't make it. It's like, well, I mean, not doing it that way, you can't, but if you made some adjustments, you might be able to do better than you think.
Right.
So, but that's a hard thing. That's the thing about money. It's really emotional. It's a really hard thing to come to grips with. It's very social. People compare themselves, by the things that money buys them, where they live, the cars they drive, the clothes they wear, the restaurants that they go out to. And so there's a lot at play. It's not as simple as putting numbers on a spreadsheet, because if it was, I certainly wouldn't have a job.
Awesome. Ed, thank you so much. I think we brought up a lot of really cool, interesting points, but is there anything that you wish I would have asked you that we haven't touched on?
We had a pretty wide-ranging conversation. I just think that when people think about money, I would hope that when they're again honest with themselves as they go through it, okay, and not that everybody's fooling themselves. And if you're in a bad spot, you're in a bad spot, and that's okay. You own that, and you work to do better. And if you're a little bit better, well to do, um, then maybe you take a closer look at your spending and you ask yourself, are my values being, is my spending aligned with my values? And if not, what can I do to fix that? And there are things that you can do, not to live like a pauper or anything like that. And then just recognize, especially for women, that money is not a nice to do, it's a must do. It's definitely a survival skill. And there's nothing wrong with being good with it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money. Now, if you do bad things with your money, that's not the money's fault. It's your fault, right? Bad people have with more money, that makes things worse. I get it. But good people with more money makes things better. So if you're of good heart and body and mind, right? You want to do, you're good for the world. If you have more money, you can do more good for the world. So don't be
Absolutely
afraid
true.
to make more money.
Excellent. That's perfect advice. So, Ed, how can people reach you if they want to have a further conversation with you?
I'd go to enlightenher.com. That's like I said, that's the new arm, our sister company that we're building out. That's a much bigger tent. We have a lot of resources that we're going to be putting out, putting a ton of effort behind it. And especially if you're a woman, I would engage with us there. If you are in a situation where you have some measure of affluence on it and looking for a trusted partner, then you might want to pop over to Burning River Advisory Group. We're same people for the most part running both companies. I mean, not exactly, but we'll have a conversation with you, give you some thoughts, and kind of slot you in the point you in the right direction depending what you want and where you want to go. And if you're someone who's considering divorce and you're in that world, I would definitely go to Enlighten Her. There's some great resources there. We have some workshops coming up. That's one area above all areas that I've seen where you really got to get knowledgeable, and you have to do it sooner than later, because those mistakes tend to be one that lasts for a long period of time. So you got to get it right.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom with us today. And
Well,
thank
thanks
you.
for having me, Christine. I appreciate it.
That was great. And thank you, listeners, for listening. I bet you know somebody who could be a little bit better with their money or who would at least like to have some confirmation that they're doing things right. So please forward this episode to them. Actually, find 5 people like that and forward this episode to them. And then be sure to be here and join us next week. Thanks.